What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and after going through the comments section for Absolute Green Lantern issue number 7, I noticed that a lot of you guys seemed really confused about the nature of the Absolute Universe light levels, and then the ranks within those light levels, and how it compares to the traditional emotional spectrum and the Green Lantern mythos in the main DC universe. And it makes sense. We were only really able to dedicate maybe 3 to 4 minutes of a meaningful explanation in that video. So in this one, we're going to provide a more comprehensive explanation to the Absolute Green Lantern mythos. And we're also going to refer to these light levels as just the emotional spectrum. It hasn't necessarily been called that, but it's just kind of the easiest way to get the point across. And so as it stands right now, in the Absolute Green Lantern mythos, there's 2 opposing factions. You have the Owens from the planet Oa, also known as the Omega and Alpha, hence the name OA, and then you have the Weaponers of Cord, and they actually have inverse viewpoints, and I'll talk about what that means here in a minute. But within the Absolute Universe, all we know about the emotional spectrum in the here and now is that you have 4 light levels. You've got black, red, green, and gold. Now, unlike the main DC universe emotional spectrum, where the light levels are horizontal, right, one next to the other, this is more of a vertical thing, which is to say, a kind of ranking system among the lights. Black, which is known as Cord, represents chaotic action. Now, this is not mindless in the traditional sense. It's more acting on passion or impulse, but recklessness might be the best word to use here, right? Basically, defying order and structure. Now, red, also known as Rao, is restraint from action. Now, this does not mean that those individuals wielding the red light never do anything, right? It simply just means that they stop and they think before they act. So it can really be viewed more as defensive action. The reason why I use the term defensive action is because as we get into green, also known as Soar, this is called good action, but it can really be considered more offensive action than anything else. So you can kind of view the red light as those individuals who are protectors, whereas those who wield the green light are soldiers. But because of the fact that it's good action, they are individuals who go out into the universe and fight on behalf of maybe the weak or something like that. Superheroes, by all standards of measurement. And then gold, also known as R, represents enlightenment, complete knowledge. Now, within each one of these light levels, you have a ranking system in and of itself. You have Ain, you have Abin, and then you have Tomar. Because of the nature of these rankings, a lot of people have actually adopted the philosophy of the Jedi in trying to explain this, which is what we'll do here because honestly, it works exceedingly well. So an Ain is someone who's learning to use this power for the very first time. They'd be more akin to like a Jedi Padawan, right? Discovering the Force, discovering how it works, how it can be used to serve their purposes as a member of the Jedi. And Abin is more like a Jedi Knight, somebody who is adept and is capable of wielding this light effectively, but they're not really a master of it. They simply just know how to control it. A Tomar would not be a Jedi Master. A Tomar is actually an anomaly. Somebody who has one of these light levels, but wasn't supposed to get it, right? They didn't really receive any kind of teaching from the Owens, and they weren't really subjected to the selection system. And the reason why I use the term selection system is because when it comes to the green light, they really seem to be the ones that go out and select those individuals who are going to be chosen to use one of these lights. Now, this is more contextual. We haven't really seen any other light level go out there and select individuals. The entire basis behind the Absolute Green Lantern mythos so far is that an individual wielding the green light showed up on Earth and then basically took over the town and then started plucking individuals out and subjecting them to the testing. And so what this means is that when a person is subjected to this test, it's not as though they're chosen to wield the green light. It's simply more of a question, which one of these lights will you wield? So it's not that dissimilar from like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, right? Hogwarts, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, or Ravenclaw. And so that's why in the Absolute Green Lantern comic, John Stewart became gold because he was seeking knowledge. He was trying to understand what was going on. Guy Gardner was chosen for red because he was acting in a defensive manner, a protective manner for the people in the town. Hal Jordan ended up adopting the black chaotic action because he was acting in a chaotic way. He was full of anxiety. He was full of panic. He hadn't quite mastered emotional intelligence, within that scenario. And Sojourner Mullane was a Tomar. And so that kind of brings us into the idea of how Ain, Abin, and Tomar apply to these light levels. Because say, for example, that you had an Ain Sur. That is a person who's wielding the green light for the very first time. An Abin Sur, like the one that we saw show up on Earth, that is someone who is adept at wielding the green light and is seemingly given the authority to select individuals to decide what light color they're going to wield. A Tomar, also known as an anomaly, is what Sojourner Mullane is in the Absolute Green Lantern mythos. She quite literally took the Green Lantern power away from Abin Sur. And so that's why he referred to her as an anomaly, because she has the green power now, but she wasn't chosen to wield the green power. Now, there are other examples of this across the absolute universe, but this gets the point across well enough, I think. Now, the differentiation between the philosophies of the Owens and the Weaponers is that from the Owens perspective, black is the lowest level, operating on instinct, being reckless, using your power for selfish means. Red is above that, which goes into green, which goes into gold. Total enlightenment, mastering yourself and looking to understand everything that's going on around you. The inverse is the case for the Weaponers. They believe that gold is the lowest, and what you should be striving for is impulse, chaotic action, recklessness, using the power for your own selfish motivations. Now, which one of these philosophies is the quote-unquote correct philosophy? Only time will tell. But one of the things we mentioned in Absolute Green Lantern number 7, and it's something worth mentioning here, with the Absolute Justice League being introduced and the speech of Absolute Joker and basically realizing the truth of the Absolute Universe created by Darkseid and so on and so forth, that the universe itself is a place of testing. It's a place of chaos. And so seemingly the viewpoint of the Weaponers is the correct one given the nature of the universe. But again, that may very well change as time goes on. And so I do want to specify here that again, Ain, Abin, and Tomar, these apply to every single light level. So an Ain Cord is a person wielding chaotic action for the first time. An Abin R is someone who is using the gold light and is incredibly adept at it. Whereas a Tomar R is someone who somehow got their hands on the gold light and is wielding it, but they weren't selected for that gold light. Now, one of the other things to specify here is that there doesn't necessarily seem to be an amount of time that has to pass before a person transitions from Ain to Abin. It really just seems based more on how well they're able to control that particular light. So if we start looking at the individual members of the Absolute Green Lantern mythos right now, John Stewart, Guy Gardner, Sojourner Mullane, and Hal Jordan, their rankings go like this. John Stewart, because he was seeking knowledge and was inducted into the gold light, is an Ain R. He's using that for the very first time. Because Guy Gardner was operating in a defensive action and was chosen for the red light, he's an Ain Rao, using that light for the very first time. Sojourner Mullane had taken the power of the Abin Sur, so she's a Tomar Sur. And again, Hal Jordan, because of his recklessness, is an Ain Core, someone using the black light for the first time and not fully understanding how it works. But that brings us into the idea of the emotional spectrum from the main DC universe, which again, some elements of this are being carried over into the absolute universe. So the emotional spectrum in the main DC universe is exactly what it sounds like, a spectrum of emotions. It starts with black and then goes to red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, sapphire, and white. Black represents death, red is rage, orange is greed, yellow is fear, green is willpower, blue is hope, indigo is compassion, sapphire is love, and then white is life. So obviously, life and death exist at opposite ends. Green is in the middle because willpower is considered the most balanced out of all the emotions, mostly because of the fact that it incorporates some aspect of all the emotions in itself. That a Green Lantern is able to instill hope in those individuals who may not have it, because that Green Lantern's fighting on their behalf for whatever reason, right? Superhero stuff. But with villains, they may fear the Green Lantern. Now, Green Lanterns can be greedy, like any sentient being can, but they also have compassion for other individuals. And the baseline or the foundation for that compassion is oftentimes love. And where they do get angry, like any normal being does, they also have been forced to kill. For example, when the Green Lanterns were authorized to kill the Sinestro Corps members during the Sinestro Corps War. But for the most part, they try to preserve life. So again, all these elements kind of fit in together. Now, while each one of the traditional lanterns in the main DC universe have a kind of checks and balance in comparison to most all the other Lantern Corps, we don't necessarily have to get into that because that is a full 30-minute video in and of itself. I promise you. Covering all the checks and balances is going to be a chunky video. But the elements of this that are being carried over to the absolute universe include things like the nature of the Blue Lanterns, which is to say, Blue Lanterns are inherently defensive. They're more like the healers of the various Lantern Corps that are out there, but they can boost the powers of Green Lanterns. Now, we haven't necessarily seen anything within the absolute universe that indicates that the red light can boost the power of a green light. It's entirely possible that it can. That may be one of those changes that's coming later on down the line. But the two of them really seem to work in tandem. Green Lanterns are at their most capable when they're accompanied by a Blue Lantern. And so it would stand to reason that within the absolute universe, those wielding the green light would be at their most capable when they're accompanied by someone wielding the red light. Whereas gold is really more synonymous with white lanterns. White lanterns in the main DC universe are basically as close to God as any lantern could possibly become. They can alter reality on a universal level. They are exceedingly powerful. It does require an individual to master the entirety of the emotional spectrum in order to harness the power of the white light. But when that happens, they almost kind of achieve a higher state of understanding, to the point that when Kyle Rayner in the Green Lantern mythos became a White Lantern, he was oftentimes referred to as Space Jesus. One, because of how he looked. And two, just because of the kind of role he played, that he was more of the brains behind the operation, if we want to look at it that way. Now, the gold light is particularly interesting because I would argue the gold light is more synonymous with the White Lanterns and the traditional Guardians of the Universe in the main DC universe. Those of you guys who aren't really aware, and I don't necessarily know anyone who is, but if you're not, the Guardians of the Universe are the ones responsible for creating the Green Lantern Corps in the first place, but they are aware of the entirety of the emotional spectrum, and in some form or fashion, whether through inaction or poor decision-making, they are essentially responsible for the rise of all the other Lantern Corps that exist out there in some way. But the reason why I say the gold light in the absolute universe is some combination of the White Lantern and the Guardians of the Universe is because the pursuit of total knowledge is kind of what both White Lanterns and the Guardians did. That the Guardians were kind of the brains behind the operation of the Green Lantern Corps, and really a lot of what happened in the main DC universe regarding the Lantern Corps. And so that's why I say having a pretty solid understanding of the traditional Green Lantern mythos definitely helps to better understand the absolute universe emotional spectrum, but it's by no means required. And again, I do want to specify this is all information we're learning in real time. So it's entirely possible this could all be expanded on, or some aspects of this could change. Because lest we forget, both John and Guy are the ones providing this information to Sojourner Mullane and to Hal Jordan in terms of the Ain and the Abin and the light levels. But they're learning about all of this. So it could be that maybe they're wrong in some capacity, or maybe there's simply just a lot more going on than they've originally been led to believe. But hopefully that makes sense of everything that's going on in the absolute universe involving the Green Lantern mythos. Again, not a ton has taken place at the moment. We're still kind of learning a few things here and there. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.